Hello, everyone. Welcome to GNU according to CD. That is Government of National Unity. So, guys, the first things first, I just want to thank the SABC, Blaine Sherman, I think his name is, for bringing up this amazing topic where South Africans are facing off with foreign nationals and the debate that is taking place regarding Abahambe because we want them to be gone. Now, here is the thing that we've been saying, especially in this channel, and I've also heard other channels as well talking about the same thing, the Immigrations Act, that in order for a foreign national to open a business in South Africa, they must have, I've said, $244,000. Of course, this fluctuates according to the exchange rates and stuff like that. But basically, they need to have invested 5 million rand into the South African economy, or they are going to invest 5 million rand into the South African economy. And therefore, that criteria does qualify them to open a business in South Africa. The one that I was not sure of, but I've heard before, because we have these businesses all over. Whether you are legally in South Africa and you do have that 5 million rand investment into the South African economy, you're still not allowed to open such a business. The ones of used cars, oh, please go all over Gauteng. If you go all over Gauteng, you will find a Nigerian owning a used car dealership. That is against the law, according to immigration's law. And let's talk about the salons. Yeah, the salons that most South African women go to, especially when they have some nice event they are going to, like a wedding and etc. No, they're not allowed to open such businesses according to immigration's law. And they're also not allowed to open tuck shops either because they are not going to meet that criteria. However, the part that I think I do understand because it's not within the bounds of the law. If the law it doesn't is not there, there's no use of fighting people on something that is not on the legal documents unless the people are creating their own conditions in their own communities and saying, listen, you can only operate a business in our community based on this, and that. Because South Africa, we are a rainbow nation, we are diverse, we have different cultures and customs. For example, if you are a black person going to open, I'm talking like a South African to South African, I'm a black person, I'm going to a Muslim community to open a restaurant. Now, when I get there, I can't just open a restaurant without considering halal and all these other cultural practices that are practiced in that community. You know what I'm saying? Even though it may not be within the bounds of the law, which meat or which kind of food that I am selling, but because this is a Muslim community, I need to respect their traditions, their culture, and customs. And part of that is that the meat must be halal, that type of situation. So each community does have its own rules. Just because the law does not apply, it does not mean now they have to insert themselves by force and say, well, the law does allow me because I'm a refugee or an asylum seeker. It's understandable that if there's a war going on in your country, now let's forget about the first safe country principle. They say they did fly all the way from Congo to South Africa and they're asylum seekers, and indeed there is a war going on in the DRC. Now, just because the law says that you can open a business, work, and do things while you are waiting for your status to be declared or to be finalized, and then you come into my community just because the law doesn't say whether you can or you can't, and then you do as you please. Basically, you hijack our intellectual property being Spaza shops. Spaza shops, it's our thing. It's our thing that it's our thing whether people like it or not. That is our thing. This is how township economies used to run. This is how the township itself used to get its supplies, and then these people started and they came and inserted themselves and then shut down the South Africans what do you call these shops. Now, the part where I've always also said, when I always speak to the Somalis and the Bangladeshis and Zimbabweans that own tuck shops in our townships, I always said, guys, the only thing that is going to stop South Africans from complaining against you is when you partner up. If there's a 50-50 share of this particular spaza shop or this particular store, I believe there would not be a lot of noise. But no, they want to shut South African stores down and they monopolize the entire Spaza shop industry in our communities. Now, listen to this. I think his name is, I forgot his name. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name, but he is mentioned in the segment that I'm going to show you of this debate that was taking place at the SABC. It's a 56-minute long discussion, which I'm going to break it down into small bites, and then we'll just take on the things that they are discussing there. And I must also say, the EFF it's either the EFF or it's this gentleman, Sihle Lonzi, who seems to have taken a different direction from what Julius Malema always preaches. He makes sense, but at the same time, he is political and not only just political, but also populist in my views. Even though I think some of the things that he's saying makes perfect sense, but we know already that EFF is good and manipulating the people of South Africa. They tell us what we want to hear, but they practice something totally different at the end of the day. But the guy that I'm most impressed with is the guy, I think his name is Advise Chume, who is Action SA guy. He is making sense, he's calm, cool, and he makes a lot of logic in his assertions. And then, of course, the expert, whom also I'm very impressed with because he comes with the legal side of things. I think he's a immigrations expert. And now, this is the part that is very important for us to hear. This first part, I'll get to all the other parts. This first part that it this is what we supposed to be seeking from these people when we approach them. Show us, number one, that you have invested 5 million rand into the South African economy. Number two, you have tax clearance, meaning that you are paying taxes in this country for running this business. Number three, that your business it is registered with CIPRO. And number four, the Department of Labor supports your business. And number five, I already mentioned this CIPRO. That all of these are laws that you are adhering to in order to run a business here in South Africa, whether that is a spaza shop or whether is that a car dealership or you are running some kind of engineering company, etc., and so on. And lastly, 60% of your business you have hired South Africans. Those are the five things that when we visit these businesses, we ought to find. If we don't find those things, we give them 30 days, pack up, and leave. And there's another township that I'm also going to show you, I think, after this video, where this gentleman is sharing about his township that they don't have even one foreign national running a store, and he gives all kinds of reasons, etc., and so on. And the other segments is where foreign nationals they're also making their own contributions, and you would laugh at the amount of organizations that these people have opened. To me, it spells they've opened political parties. And then I think these organizations, the reason why they exist is because probably the NGOs like Helen Suzman and all these other NGOs that hate South Africans have advised them that you guys need to organize yourselves so that when we take South Africans to court, you guys are the plaintiffs in your organizations. It's like a church. I mean, everybody worships one God, but you have so many different churches with different names. That's exactly what is I was picking up from this debate that oh, so many organizations that are coming with foreign nationals. I understand with South Africans. South Africans, it's their country. They can have every organization under the sun. That's up to them. But seemingly, they're all fighting for the same cause. But the foreign nationals was quite interesting to hear that. Anyways, guys, without wasting much of your time, here's this gentleman. I think it's Yusuf or something. I apologize. He speaks on something that I believe every South African ought to know, and these are the things that we should take to these people that are running businesses in our communities and finding out: have you complied with this? Have you complied with this? And then if it's a refugee that is running, let's say, a store, almost like a warehouse, clearly you're no longer qualified to run as a refugee, but as an immigrant. Because there needs to be a graduation from a refugee running a small puzzle shop or a small fruit and vegetable table somewhere in the corner versus somebody who orders in millions of rands. So if you are able to order in millions of rands and then people come and buy or stock at your shop, that means you have graduated from a refugee into an immigration status. And if you're at the immigration status, therefore, you need to comply with that 5 million rand capital to actually run a business of that size in South Africa. So, anyways, here it is.
So let's deal with the issue of owning a business. So the Immigrations Act makes it very clear that you have to have the support of the Department of Labor before you can operate a business in the Republic.
Right.
Now, we're speaking Immigrations Act, not Refugees Act. Let's make it easy, get that out of the way. The Refugees Act doesn't require any of those very strict compliances. You can work, study, open a business, etc., until your application has been finally determined. Now you come to the Immigrations Act, which caters for people wanting to have an own business visa. There they're required to have 5 million rand in capital or a waiver if it's one of the 8 sectors that are sought after, like automobile, industries, tourism, etc. You also have to undertake to employ at least 60% South Africans in your workforce.
Right.
But behind that comes this letter from the DTI, the letter of recommendation. They don't just hand these out. I mean, there are 2 areas that are completely prohibited: used cars, salons, and I think exotic dancers. Those are the 3 areas
Right.
you're not supposed to be opening a business. But for everyone else, the DTI, and the DTI is very, very strict. You're not going to open a shop, import and sell. They want to see manufacturing and the twin peaks of success: job creation and skills transfer. That Immigration Act doesn't apply to refugees and asylum seekers.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see a proliferation of these businesses in other areas.
Right.
But strictly speaking, there is a divide between the 2. One is relaxed, the other one is very, very strict. So you won't find a foreigner coming to open a Spaza shop because he's not going to meet the criteria of the DTI. So there are laws in place. Now, whether the laws are abused or not is a different question. Whether our borders are porous, whether our refugee and asylum seeking regime, which Treasury says is going to take 63 years to clear.
Right.